Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Oh, baby, we got the tech going this morning. I spent way too much time trying to make sure that the tech was good for this show. And I hope and I pray that the audio is coming through clearly. On audio test 1, late last night, it did not work. But on audio test 2, it worked very, very well. Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm working with new equipment. We are hopefully going to have a good show. And if we don't, you'll get your money back. But then again, you're not paying for this at all. Now, we have a lot to get into today, and I know that there are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to hope for, some Flyers talk, and we might get there later. But I have been incensed now for about 36 hours about what has been going on around the Philadelphia Eagles. And more than that, the mission statement of this show is to talk about the biggest news in Philadelphia sports, national sports, and dissect the media that cover them. Today is a big media show as well. We're going to kind of do like a roundup because Brandon Graham lit the Philadelphia sports scene on fire. And then he tried to backtrack. And then radio pundits responded. And then national media responded. And all I kept thinking to myself was, this is the whole point of this show. Like, this is so much of why I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do. Ooh, there we go. A little bit closer. There we go. Wait for my close-up, Mr. DeVille. The whole point of this show, or a big part of it, is to try to bring a little bit of rationality and to bring just a little bit of level-headedness to the discourse. Because I knew for a fact that as soon as Brandon Graham came out and spoke a couple nights ago, Monday night, I knew as soon as it happened that somebody was going to blow it up into an even bigger thing than it needed to be. Now, was it a big deal? It was. We're going to get into that. We're going to go back. We're going to play Brandon Graham's quotes. We're going to go to his walking back. And then we're going to kind of touch on a bunch of the other stuff that has been said, not only in Philadelphia, but outside of it. And then we're going to try to come to a verdict on whether or not it was a good idea or a bad idea for Brandon Graham to air out some very, very dirty laundry, or what he at least initially perceived to be dirty laundry. Before we go there, I'm going to go out to the comments really quick to say hello to everybody. Zach O. Well, then, oh, yes. Happy Wednesday morning, Russ. Thank you, Zach. Thank you for being here. Ford is here. And when I asked, tech-wise, how are we looking? How are we sounding? Your head's still large, but more distant, which is good. So just for Ford, let's see. How big can I make my head? There you go. Hey there, Ford. Hello. Hello. How are you? All right, we're done with that. I have to zoom my head back out. This is the whole thing. I mean, we can go all the way out to here. Now, I was actually kind of sad because I want to have this to a point at some point. I'm going to keep testing this, all right? But I want to test this where I can get my bobbleheads and everything back on display, including a special gift from Andrew Fawcett, which I'm working on his reciprocated gift. Well, there we go. See, now it's just willy-nilly likes to kind of go in and out. But it's fine. I'm still convinced that there's like a voice command element to this that I know nothing about, but that's okay. JH says that the head is big because of the ego, not the camera. That is also probably true. I'm going to have to probably toggle off the one setting that keeps making all the motion. It seems like as soon as I move my hand, it freaks out. Let's see. Andrew Bagley over on X, remembering that if you want to comment on the show on X, you, of course, have to click on the video first and then go into that old Periscope mode. And if you comment there, I can see it. I did see that from the last couple of shows. There were people who were trying to interact with the show, but they didn't follow those instructions, so they were just replying to the video. So if you want to reply on X, you have to click on the video first and then go into the different view, and then you can do it. Let's go here. Chris Freed says, the Brandon Graham injury was worse than we ever thought it would be. BG's now auditioning for his next job, and the Eagles locker room is burning down. I'm not so sure about that, but we will get into it. Like I said, it is massive to me that we at least try to provide a little bit of level-headed discourse. Just a little bit. Doesn't need to be a lot, but just like a little bit of let's not be total dumbasses about it. Because there's more to this than meets the eye. And Raymond Supper over on YouTube says, morning, Russ. I was running errands yesterday in Tampa and had Colin Cowherd on, and the Eagles situation got a 20-minute segment on a national show. National media focuses on Sirianni's inability to what? Well, we're going to get into all that, so don't worry. Now, I want to walk people through what happened. Many of you have likely heard by this point. I would think we're 36 hours, beyond 36 hours since Brandon Graham's initial comments. But I think that it's incredibly important that we go back and we break this down bit by bit. And I have some local media, and I want you to hear the difference between the local media discourse on it and the national media discourse. Now, it's not all encompassing. In fairness, I didn't go out and get every clip from every local radio show. I didn't go out and get every single clip from every national show. There is a time limit on these things, right? There is a resource limit on these things, right? But I think we're going to get pretty damn close to as good of a breakdown as we can, and as fair and as balanced of a breakdown as we can. I'll report, you decide. I'm going to co-opt that old Fox News thing. I don't know if they say that anymore, but when I was in high school and that was on in my house every day because my parents watched it all the time, that's what I remember. We report, you decide. Coverage you can count on, all right? I want to go back to Brandon Graham's comments from the other night because this is the genesis of the entire thing. Well, really the genesis was, and we talked about this on Monday's show because now we're Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We talked about this on Monday that A.J. Brown, when asked post-game, what the one thing, if there's one thing that the Eagles need to work on, what would it be? He said passing, which everyone then took as, oh, A.J. Brown hates the quarterback again. So you fast forward about 24 hours, Brandon Graham is doing his weekly show on WIP at night, and this is what Brandon Graham had to say. Now, mind you, Brandon Graham, respected leader in that locker room, respected guy. He's been here. He was on the team that won the Eagles their first ever Super Bowl. If there's one person who's going to have a good feel for when it's the right time to air things out and when it's the right time to keep things in-house, one would presume it would be Brandon Graham. Let's go over to Brandon Graham and hear what he had to say on Monday night and kind of incited a little bit of a Philly sports riot.
The person that's complaining need to be accountable. And I'm just being honest. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he noticed. I don't know the whole story, but I know that one is trying. And I mean, 11 could be a little better with how he responds to things. And they was friends before this. It's like, man, but things have changed. And I understand that because life happens. But it's the business side that we have to make sure that we don't let the personal get in the way of the business. And that's what we got to do better as right now, because we know it's an issue. Everybody's seeing with some things, but we need to be able to talk things out as men. You know what I'm saying? But we need to let personal stuff go and let's get right for this game, because, man, it's like a lot of stuff, most of the time it's just a conversation that just need to be had. But the person with the problem got to want to talk to the person other than others. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. So that was the quote. Now, immediately, people pointed out the hypocrisy of that statement. And it's on full display. Now, again, we have to be fair here. And I'll give you my honest take on why I think Brandon Graham said that and why he came out with that and why he decided now's the right time. But, it cannot be overstated how hypocritical the statement kind of sounds, because Brandon Graham effectively says these guys have to talk it out amongst themselves and not air it out to other people, not air it out to people who aren't part of the team. They have to work it out together, not go to other people. Says Brandon Graham, an active player, though injured, an active player who is a member of the team, saying this on the biggest Philadelphia sports talk station in the city that also has the rights to the team and the games and all that. Now, is that fully hypocritical? Maybe. But why did Brandon Graham think that it was the right time to come out and say this about Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown? Why did he feel the need to say that I know they were friends and things have changed? Why? Okay. Here's the honest take. Now, you can look at this a bunch of different ways. But what I think happened is Brandon Graham maybe spoke out of turn, which he eventually walked back, and we'll get to those quotes in a second. I think what Brandon Graham might have done here is he might have seen something that gave him momentary pause and reminded him of 2023. And if you remember back in 2023, there ended up being a whole bunch of rumors There were a couple of posts and stories that were published that made it sound like the locker room had kind of given up or turned on Jalen Hurts, and it seemed like there might be some kind of internal strife. That would obviously be a significant issue, but that is something that was reported on last year, and there were thoughts that there might be a little bit of conflict between the wideout and the quarterback, and then there was kind of a contrived thing where Philly media tried to almost make it sound like A.J. Brown didn't want to be here, didn't like being here. He kind of went on this damage control tour over the summer. He's like, no, I do love it here. I want to be here. And maybe it kind of harkened back to last year when there were questions about the quarterback and the head coach's relationship, which also kind of worked its way through this offseason. So maybe it's a little bit of that. So maybe Brandon Graham had like momentary post-traumatic collapse disorder, PTCD, from last year, and decided, you know what? I'm not playing right now. I probably won't play the rest of the year. I have the opportunity here to try to get some pressure on the situation externally. Even though he's a member of the team, get some external pressure. Perhaps it had been discussed. Perhaps it had been brought to the head coach or to assistant coaches or to other people in the locker room or to management, and nothing was getting done. And maybe Brandon Graham felt like, you know what? The only thing left to do is to air it out publicly, but it can't be an active player. It can't be somebody who's going to suit up on Sunday. Can't be one of those guys. It can't be somebody who's not around the locker room. So it can't be somebody who played with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown in the past but doesn't any longer. Whether that means they're on another team, obviously that wouldn't work. Or if they've retired, like a Jason Kelce. Maybe that doesn't make sense. But Brandon Graham has been in that locker room. He was in it last year during the collapse. He was in it this year. And maybe he thought, you know what, I have enough built up equity with this fan base. I don't know how much of this actually goes into it, but I can take the hit. If this blows up poorly, I can take the heat. You know why? Because Brandon Graham is responsible for one of the most important moments in Philadelphia sports history. The strip sack that led to the Eagles winning a Super Bowl. The first in their history. So maybe it's a little bit of that. Now, was it a smart call? I don't know. If it ultimately leads to A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts squashing beef, if there is a beef to be squashed, which we'll also get to in a little bit, if that's what's at play here, and this worked, if A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts were kind of in a secret Cold War, and this is now going to force them because the coach and maybe the GM and maybe the owner is going to say, like, listen, guys, we can't have last year happen again. Figure it out. If that's what happens here, then guess what? Brandon Graham's an absolute genius and he did the right thing. But it's very hard to say right now whether or not this was a good call because we don't know yet. We have no idea. Okay. So that was Brandon Graham's initial comments. Okay. Now let me see if I can kind of pop in and out of some of the comments, and then we're gonna flip back to some of the fallout from it. So Chris Freed thinks the key takeaway is that the friendship between Hurts and Brown no longer exists. I don't know. There are people who think that, or we're trying to interpret it as Brandon Graham saying they were friends before they were teammates, and now that they're teammates, maybe it's a little bit different. Though I think that there's like a way to word that, and I don't think that what Brandon Graham actually said is that. So I'd say probably not. JH also, by the way, crediting the great effects here that we're working through the equipment today. Zooming and panning makes it feel like a real budget TV show. Thank you. That's what we're here for. You guys come here now every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I try to make the thing look a little bit better, sound a little bit better. Chris Freed also says BG channeled his inner fire marshal Bill and decided to let me show you something. All right. Dersh thinks that Graham has had the conversation with both players multiple times. He feels comfortable talking about it on the radio. AJ made it clear it was okay to put it into the media with his own comments. Okay. All right. Now, I want to take you to the next part because that is only one small part. That is, like I said before, maybe the genesis of it. If you want to argue that the real genesis of it was A.J. Brown's remarks, that's fine. Brandon Graham tries to do a little bit of damage control the next day. So Tim McManus is the one who put this out. We'll try to get through as much of this as we can, and then I want to get to some of the reaction from the national and the local media. Now, keep in mind that in a lot of cases, the media who reacted seemed to just not pay attention to this, whether they thought it was just damage control and they thought that it wasn't worth covering. I'm not sure. But here you go, and we'll change this view to, let's go here. There we go. That's better. You can see that a little better, maybe. Tim McManus. This is on Monday night after the radio hit. Just spoke with Brandon Graham. He clarified his comments about Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown's relationship. He said, I just assumed about their friendship, and it made me out to look even worse because I had it all wrong, and now people are going to run with that part. I really just want to win, man. I want brothers to be able to just hash it out. I'm going to make sure I apologize to both of them. As for the overall message he was trying to convey, I wasn't trying to be divisive. I wasn't trying to use, I didn't want us to use the media in a bad way. I can't do that either. If I've got something to say, I have to go to the people too. I made a mistake. I assumed that it was something that it wasn't. I just want to win so bad that I just don't want to use the media when we need to talk about something and we can fix the problem ourselves. I didn't add to it in a good light, so that's my bad. That does feel like a little bit of damage control, but you know what? That's okay. We're going to give Brandon Graham the benefit of the doubt. If he wants to say that it was a mistake and he regrets it, he apologizes, fine. That's okay. He went on to WIP yesterday morning to follow up to go another level because this is there's so much. I had it here. Let's see if I could find it somewhere here. Nick Sirianni responded. Nick Sirianni responded on WIP. And so we're going to go out to this next because obviously the head coach had previously been someone that there were questions about in the past about his relationship with the quarterback. And so people were then obviously wondering, all right, what's the deal? Now, the Eagles had an off day yesterday. Brandon Graham did say that on WIP's morning show yesterday. But let's go out to Nick Sirianni. How does the head coach feel about it? And how does he feel about Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown right now? All right, let's go over to the morning show at WIP yesterday.
Nick, how concerned are you that infighting on your team could cause an unraveling similar to 2023?
I think what again, there's going to be speculation of what things look like because you guys don't have let's be honest, you guys don't have all the information.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
You don't get to see it on a daily basis. All I can judge this on, and this is very similar to, when people were asking me about Jalen and I's relationship or whatever it was, all I can judge things on is what I see on a daily basis. When I see, AJ and Jalen communicating about the game plan, eating lunch together every single day, praying with each other before the game. There's going to be speculation, and I get it, rightfully so, based on what's happened the last couple of days. But all you can do is judge what you see. I have more information. I see them every single day. I see what's going on in the building. And so you just have to me, we know what there's going to be noise and I get, and I obviously get it, just based off of what's happened here in the last couple of days. But I go on my daily relationships with these guys, with myself. I go on the daily relationships that I see every single day.
So there's the head coach. Now, in fairness, I would expect the head coach to try to do damage control. In fairness. Now, I'm not saying that he went on the radio and lied. I do think that there's probably a bit of truth to everything that's been said. I think there's probably a bit of truth to there is some kind of maybe tension between the quarterback and the wide receiver. I don't think it's maybe as bad as Brandon Graham initially made it sound, but who the hell am I to say? I'm not in that locker room. One, I'm not a player. Two, I'm not media down there covering. We talked about this in the past, and this is important. This is a very important thing to point out to the people. Although all of you who watch and listen to the show anyway, you kind of know how this works anyway. When you're media and you're in the locker room, players are more willing, if they see you consistently, they are more willing to open up to you. Now, it's off the record or it's on background, but you can start to get some bits and pieces. Now, that varies by player. There might be a guy who's in the locker room for 10 years and you never get a damn thing out of him, and as soon as he retires, he tells you hey man, sorry. It's just the way that it was. It's entirely possible that you could have a situation where there's a guy in his second year and he goes, you know what, this guy writes fair stuff. Doesn't seem like a total asshole. I'll be a little bit more transparent with this guy. And they'll pick one media person. And sometimes that happens. So I don't know what this is. And I can't tell you out of experience or having known any of these guys or covered any of these guys. I can't tell you for sure that's what's happening here. Okay? I get the feeling that it's probably not an unfixable thing between the quarterback and the receiver. Now, Sirianni could also be right because he is in the building. If it is true that Hurts and A.J. Brown every day, or close to every day, are getting coffee together, like allegedly Ford and I do at La Colombe. Not true. Though not totally shutting down the idea. I do love me some La Colombe. If they're eating together every day, if they are praying together every day, that's something we don't see. That's something only people in the building would see. And if you see that on a day-to-day basis, one could assume then that A.J. Brown's comments after the game, passing, wasn't necessarily just a direct shot at the quarterback. It's that the passing game needs to get fixed. And that he doesn't secretly hate the quarterback. But again, a lot of it comes down to what's being seen in the building, what is being acknowledged, and is there an issue or not? So, we have that part of it. Now, I want to get to some of the other media because this is where you start to pull in current players, former players, some who are in the area, some who are not in the area, some who have played for this team, have not played for this team. And one clip that I saw yesterday, and we are going to cherry pick a little bit of it. You can find this on their Twitter account, but over on McAfee's show, he had Aaron Rodgers on for like the weekly hit. Now, mind you, Aaron Rodgers is in the midst of a terrible season with the Jets that can't end soon enough, which could be the last season of his career. And he is watching this thing unfold from a distance and watching this team that's 11-2 almost imploding over this. So let's get to Aaron Rodgers, who has won a Super Bowl, who's been an MVP. Let's hear what McAfee and Rodgers had to say about the situation between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts in the comments by Brandon Graham.
Conversation was Jalen and Sirianni's relationship.
Oh, yeah, got to get better, can't get better. Oh, these guys hate each other. Sirianni is a dipshit. And then now A.J. goes passing. He's talking about it's now Kellen Moore is the OC. And to what you just said there about the guy calling the plays, we should assume A.J. gets targeted 10, 15 times this weekend coming up?
I mean, listen, that could be the plan, but coverage can dictate certain things and reads, and if you get moved off the spot, you can get off of a read. A lot of stuff happens. It's not like I guarantee Jalen's not trying to avoid throwing the ball to his best playmaker, on the perimeter. But
so that's important, right? Because Rodgers has had some moments with some of his own teammates, right? He's had some issues in the past with some of his own wideouts. That's pretty well documented. The idea there is he's still the best playmaker, which he is. I mean, Barkley is their most important offensive player right now. But, A.J. Brown is the guy who can bust things open. Devontae Smith can in his own right. I think A.J. Brown is a bit more versatile in where he can make those plays happen. But saying here, he's your best playmaker, highly doubtful that Hurts is intentionally not throwing his way.
But again, I think maybe a little perspective. You're 11-2. That'd be pretty fucking sweet to be 11-2 right now.
Amen.
I mean, winning. They say winning cures everything, but obviously, there's some places where there's always going to be a little something, and maybe that's what they thrive on is a little bit of that drama. But I do think it can go when it gets out like this. I think it can bring you together, and if it's handled the right way, like a Wednesday, I'm sure one of those guys or both those guys are going to talk Wednesday and Thursday. They got a great chance to kind of squash it and move forward and take some accountability with that. But most of the time, if I'm really thinking about this from a player perspective, most of the time it's like emotional things that are they're exaggerated beyond what they actually are.
So that I think is a very cogent point there from an enthusiast of ayahuasca by Aaron Rodgers. The idea here is that something that was emotional, A.J. Brown's post-game remarks. There was that one clip of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith kind of looking like they were frustrated on the bench. That an emotional thing can get blown up. Now, the part that kind of goes back to my initial point, that Brandon Graham might have felt like there were no other options at this point. You have to put some public pressure on, or you have to make it so well known that somebody who might not have wanted to get involved as a mediator before will. And that's where I look at management. That's where I look at maybe ownership. What did Aaron Rodgers just say? He said, this is the kind of thing that once it gets out, it can galvanize the team. Again, if this ends up leading to, if there is any truth to A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts having any kind of conflict, if Brandon Graham bringing it to light ignites an initiative here among the team, ownership, front office, whatever, to squash whatever it is and to move on, again, it's a masterclass by Brandon Graham. Truly. in the initial aftermath, there were people who decided that they were going to turn this into the thing that was going to rip the team apart. I actually have a couple of them. And then we're going to get back to like some of the level-headed discourse. But, here's one. So this isn't from the station that owns the rights to the team. But I want to throw this out to somebody who's played in the highest level of their respective sport. I'll go out to Ricky Bottalico for a second. Let's check in on Ricky Bo. What did Ricky have to say? Because he seemed to think that, the locker room maybe has some issues. Again, I don't think Ricky Bottalico's down there, but Ricky Bottalico had some thoughts.
I think he was sitting there pissed off after the game. Obviously, they won, but you're still pissed off. It would be like me going out there giving up 5 runs in an inning, and we win the game in extra innings, and everything's all right, except for I still have that fire going in the pit of my stomach. I think he still had a fire going in the pit of his stomach from the game. He doesn't like when he doesn't get the ball enough. I don't think that's a bad thing. But to say that it was the passing, what part of the game? The passing. That is pointing your finger at one person. And that's not something you want to do. All he had to say is, I wish I was getting the ball more. Would that have blown up? It's a choice of words. It really is. Yeah. And he had a choice to say something or not. And he pointed the finger at his quarterback. That is not going to hold well in a locker room.
So that part of it, let's go there. Actually, you know what? Here, hold on. I'm sorry. Let me react to that part first. The issue there is this is entirely based on the notion that the whole point of him saying passing was to throw just the quarterback under the bus, when there could be reason to believe that he's saying that the entire passing game, including coaches, might be part of it. But all right, well, let's go back to here he is about Brandon Graham.
Goes out. Now it's going to get even worse because now you're thinking, who can I trust on the team? I thought Brandon Graham was my buddy. Why did he go out and say something too? You see what I mean? Yeah. It's a trickle-down effect that you don't want in any locker room, and it tears the locker room apart.
All right, so there you go. So now we're at the locker room is getting torn apart by it. I don't think the locker room is getting torn apart. I don't. These guys all saw what happened last year. They lived it. There's a professional pride to this thing, right? There's ego to this kind of thing, right? I don't think this tears the locker room apart. And by the way, if it does, it puts Brandon Graham on the outs. But Brandon Graham's not suiting up on Sunday. So I don't know how it could tear it apart. Now, when we talk about squashing beef and about the fact that, maybe there was a better way to go about it, or that no matter if there is actually any hurt feelings or there are issues between the quarterback and the receiver, we're going to go to a guy who actually played in the city and go to a guy who, up until this past weekend, had the single-season rushing record in Philadelphia Eagles history, and that's LeSean McCoy, because Shady goes, and he has his own thoughts on squashing beef. Now, he said a bunch of other things in this clip as well early on. We're not going to play full 3-minute clips here, but I do want you guys to hear what Shady had to say about the professionalism, right? About having to squash things because it's in the best interest of the team winning. Let's go out to Shady.
Right? Yo, my Saquon's job is to run the ball and do what he's been doing. The offensive lineman, their job is to be the best offensive lineman in football because they are, and they showing that. The quarterback. Yeah. Your job, beef or no beef, your job is to read everything, to throw the ball. If he's open, he's open. Right? Wide receivers. You want the ball? Cool. Get open and catch it. Your job is to get open and catch the ball. James. So no matter what's going on or what's the issue or who's cool, who's not cool, who's beefing, we got a job to do. Yep. I come to work sometimes, not here, but other places, you know what I'm saying? And I might not like the dude I'm working with. Yeah. Might not like this teammate. But I put all that to the side. That's Chase, huh? Because we're trying to win. Yeah, so I'm not mad. I'm not mad at AJ or Jalen Hurts. You know what I mean? Or BG. He mind his business a little bit. You know, he's Michigan. He should know that. But all I'm saying is we have a job to do, though. Yeah. If you do your job, there's no issues.
And by the way, he's alluding back to something from the very beginning of the clip where he says about Brandon Graham. He loves Brandon Graham, but Brandon Graham also led his initial clip, and I don't think it was the one that I showed on the show here. I think it was a little bit before, where he said, I don't know everything that's going on, but, and then Shady was like, well, if that's the case, don't talk. Don't go public with the potential beef. Don't bring it up if you don't know the full context. Okay, so there's that part. Now, that's Shady. We've gone back and forth. Like I said, we're kind of doing a lot of jumping around. Now, there are other things. I don't want this to just become a clips show today, but I think that context is pretty important, okay? I'll go to a guy who's one of the, I don't know, I still look back on this guy with a lot of love, and I know that eventually it blew up, and it didn't end well, and we all were left to think about what could have been. But Terrell Owens was on with Freddie Mitchell, and now T.O. had one of the worst blow-ups and end to a career with the Eagles that you could have ever imagined. And it should have been the opening of a window for multiple Super Bowls, but that's very well documented that things went very south with him and Donovan McNabb. But here's what T.O. had to say about the entire situation.
Like I said, nobody knows unless you got firsthand information that those two guys have beef.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it got to a point when I played toward the end of the season, I didn't like Donovan, but that didn't deter me from going out there balling.
And you know what? You know what is so funny, Terrell? Let me put this out there because people don't know that y'all was so mad at each other, but you had your best game in the Super Bowl. He still threw you the ball,
bro. That's all that matters. At the end of the day, once you get in between the lines, anything external, like, bro, that shouldn't matter because the common goal is to win games.
Right.
If you're being selfish and not throwing me the ball for XYZ for whatever reason, then that's on you. That's going to
affect you. That's
right, exactly.
So that's a pretty mature response out of T.O. But again, that's T.O. saying that as the receiver, he went out and played hard, and Donovan still threw him the ball. So we kind of have it's not a line of delineation here, but we certainly now have enough player opinions on what this was, what the potential beef was, and whether or not it actually matters. Whether at the end of the day, it's as critical or as close to blowing up or being the thing that tears down the season. They seem to have a consensus here that if A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts are professional, it doesn't matter. But you should put the team first. Okay. That leads us to what are the next steps? Okay, so if we can all agree now that A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, if there was an issue, they have likely already spoken or they will speak today at NovaCare to each other. I don't expect either of them to address it to the media. I really don't. Do I expect A.J. Brown to come out with some ridiculous apology about how, he didn't want to be a distraction? No, and I don't think he needs to. Now, could he clarify and say, when I said passing, I didn't say Jalen's name. I meant the passing game needs to be better because the passing game is 31st in the league. And we're, one of the best rushing offenses, which is great, but there's this massive disparity. Whereas a team like Baltimore is in the top 10 for rushing and passing, and their rushing game with Derrick Henry has been elite as well. He could come out and say that. And I think that's fair. If he says, look, players, coaches, execution, we just need to be better. Because ultimately that's also going to help Saquon in the rushing game. Because if we are drawing attention, that's going to create more holes for him. We're going to be able to get bigger leads. That is the way that I would take it. If I were A.J. Brown and I were going to address the media about it, that's what I would say. And I think that's fair. And it doesn't look like, PR got to him. That just sounds like an honest interpretation. It's hey, I didn't say it was the quarterback. I said passing. And I meant the passing game. Okay? I don't know. I don't think this needs to be a big thing that much longer. Now, there are some people that want to turn it into a much bigger thing and want to turn this into the fact that, the team is going to fall apart. And I'm going to go out to one more radio host before I get back to, what the next steps are. Because, again, over at the station that doesn't own the rights to the team, this was, I thought, a pretty big hot take. And I sat back and I listened to it a few times. And I said, this to me is part of the problem. Now I get it. If you're on the station that isn't winning, I get it. You need to create controversy, and I respect it. I do. I might not agree with it, but I'm all about if you're the underdog, you start taking swings at the big dog, and you hope that you catch at least some residual good out of it, and maybe people will start tuning in. But this came from Missinelli's show, but it's not Missinelli, it's his co-host Bill Colarulo, who seems to think that Jalen Hurts was to blame for last year, is to blame for this year, and that things are going to get even worse. Let's go over to Bill.
Because I'm not so sure that...
Who, by the way, seems like a nice guy and has great facial hair.
The problem
is A.J. Brown. December of 2023, Jeff McClain reports that inside the Eagles organization, they're questioning Jalen Hurts' leadership style. January of 2024, Joe Santoliquito from Bleeding Green Nation writes an article about how multiple sources have said Jalen Hurts has changed since he signed the big contract. End of the season last year, Jalen Hurts is asked about his relationship with Nick Sirianni. He gives a weird, cryptic answer. I didn't know he was going anywhere. June of 2024, mandatory minicamp. Jalen Hurts is given a softball question about Nick Sirianni. He refuses to answer it positively. What happens? We're left deciding all summer what's going on between Jalen and the head coach.
Fair.
Then August of 2024, Jeff McClain and Jeremy Fowler of ESPN write an article, and it says, multiple sources believe Jalen Hurts has tuned out Nick Sirianni, and Hurts as a leader will need to improve on a habit of shutting people out when frustrated, a habit of shutting people out. And now we're hearing there's personal problems between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. So what is the common denominator here? Everyone wants to talk about A.J. being a diva. Everybody wanted to talk about Nick Sirianni was the issue. The common denominator has been Jalen Hurts.
Wow. Bold. Be bold. I always say it's not a hot take if it's the right take. I don't think it's the right take, but it's a hot take for sure. So Jalen Hurts is apparently the big problem. Now, again, I don't think either of these guys are the problem. I just think that in the heat of the moment, A.J. Brown said a thing. That's about as far as it goes. People who have to rely on the Nielsen ratings, God love them. It's a stupid system. There are only however many meters in the market, but this is how bonuses are dictated. This is how ratings are dictated, people's jobs. I get it. Okay, fine. It's a stupid system. I feel bad for all those people that they have stuff that are tied to outdated systems, but that's neither here nor there. So the idea there is that Jalen Hurts is this problem. He didn't say like a locker room cancer, but he kind of implied that like, Jalen Hurts is not exactly a great guy. Jalen Hurts is not exactly somebody that you want to have around. Jalen Hurts has been the common denominator. Okay, if that's the case, if that's where you want to go, that Jalen Hurts is the actual issue here, then I need somebody to explain to me why Saquon Barkley said what he said about Jalen Hurts like a week or two ago. Because Saquon Barkley flat out called Jalen Hurts an absolute winner. And now, again, this is his first year. And could it be something where Saquon wasn't around for last year and so he didn't get to see it all? But Zach Berman had this quote. Let me see if I'll throw this on the screen quick because I'm trying to make it a habit here that we give credit where credit's due. So the people who go get the quotes, we're going to bring them up. We're going to shout them out. So here you go. This is Zach Berman, exactly 1 week ago, last Wednesday. Saquon Barkley on Jalen Hurts. I was talking about it the other day with my family. I don't really know how to explain it, but he has the it factor to win football games. He has that. How do you explain it? I don't really know, but you know it when you see it. I don't think there's a lot of players who have a fumble snap on the 1 yard line and still find a way to score a touchdown. Like, he has that to him. He's had it his whole career here. When he came into Alabama, the success he had at Oklahoma, you can't coach that. It's hard to find, or it says it's hard to find him. I think it's hard to find. I'm happy I'm a part of this team. Saquon Barkley, somebody who has been lauded between the Giants and the Eagles as being a leader, a great guy, good evaluator of character, like all the works. I'm sorry, but I have a really hard time. And again, this is with all due respect. I have a very hard time looking at the words of somebody on radio saying, Jalen Hurts is the common denominator to all of this. When at the same time, I have this very well-respected running back, again, respected by two organizations, going into a rivalry game, no one had a negative word to say about Saquon Barkley. How do you make those things make sense together? Do they exist in the same realm? I say no. I'm more likely to say I'm going to go with Barkley because I believe that was an unprompted thing as well, right? And Barkley doesn't have to be as effusive in the praise, but he was saying the guy's a winner. Now, listen, if there's some other kind of beef, do we then turn around and say, oh, is Saquon Barkley really going to trash the quarterback? No, he won't. Oh, well, Saquon Barkley's happy because he's getting a lot of carries. He's not getting that. You remember, he's not getting involved in games. We talked about this on Monday. I think the Eagles continue to fail, especially in the first quarter. They don't get Saquon very involved in the offensive game plan early enough in games. He's just having the time of his life running behind an offensive line that is creating massive gaping holes. Oh, and by the way, he does have a quarterback who has not thrown an interception in, was it 7 games now? He has that guy. He has these elite wideouts on the outside who take a lot of attention. He has at any given time a good to great tight end. Depends. You have Goddard, you have Calcaterra. He has all these things. He's a happy guy. And again, he wasn't around for last year's collapse. You know what Saquon Barkley was around for? A lot of shitty Giants seasons. And if there's anybody who's been in locker rooms where you have seen how pervasive losing and a losing culture can be, it's Saquon Barkley from all the years that he spent in New York. And yet here he is giving you a character assessment. I'm going to take Saquon Barkley's word. No offense to Bill. All right, we're going to go out to the comments here quick. I have a couple of other things because I want to talk about the next steps because that is ultimately what's going to matter the most. And by the way, you can let me know in the comments. Do we like all the clips today? Are we okay with the video today? How are we feeling out there? I actually came prepared today. It took me, it's episode number 40. This is the most prepared I think I've ever been for a show. Just let me know. Is there a market difference or not? I don't know. Somebody could just let me know. And if you think it stinks, just don't tell me that because I don't know if my ego can handle that, okay? Chris Freed over on YouTube. Eagles are like a fully loaded gas tanker speeding down the highway at 90 with a driver who has an open container of lit matches. Oh, jeez. Ford says, what probably pisses off AJ is a play like the one where he was wide open, but Jalen threw the ball to the corner instead to Devontae. On that touchdown, him or Calcaterra, I don't recall, but again, they're 11-2. That play, because we looked at that screenshot on Monday, where A.J. Brown is cutting to the middle of the field, and he's wide open. That was a touchdown that Hurts completes to Devontae Smith in the corner. Now, why he made that read, why he threw what was a more complicated pass there instead of right over the middle, I don't know. Do I actively think he looked at A.J. Brown and said, nah, to hell with him, and then threw it to Smith? I don't. But again, I don't know. Spiral out, what up? How you doing? JH with the It's Always Sunny reference. The gang squashes their beefs. Ford makes a good point here. Here's a statement that's entirely true. The Eagles passing game, if the Eagles passing game does not improve, they will not win the Super Bowl. So AJ knows that. I know that. Everyone knows that. I think we all do. You can't have one of the worst by total yards. You can't have one of the worst passing offenses in the league and probably win a Super Bowl. Or at least it can't remain that bad in the postseason. If you end up being like middle of the pack passing offense in the postseason, but you have the best rushing game, I think those will balance out. I think you're actually okay. You don't need to be number one and number one. But it does have to get fixed. It can't be this bad. But again, here's where it's hard if you are trying to be fair. All season, or at least early in the season, people pointed to Jalen Hurts turning the ball over a lot. He was getting plenty of yards through the air. He was getting some with his legs. But he was turning the ball over. People started freaking out. They started making comparisons to Carson Wentz. They've now won 9 straight games. He hasn't thrown an interception in, I think it's 7 games. It might be longer, right? Has not thrown an interception. Has he maybe gone in his own mind and started to play a more conservative game? We're seeing him use his legs more, which is good. And it's another wrinkle to add. And it can help Barkley, and in theory, it could help his wideouts. But he is playing a turnover-free style of football that maybe doesn't take as many risks, and now people are upset that the passing game production is down. You have to pick. You can't be mad at the quarterback for turning the ball over too much, taking shots, and then be upset that he's no longer taking as many shots and he's not turning the ball over. That, my friends, is also hypocritical. Dersh says, didn't this happen last year where AJ got pissed? He wasn't getting targets after a loss. Understandable after a loss. You can't pull that card after 11 wins. That's where I think you get some of these players who we've heard from today where they say there's still that fire in your stomach, like you're still worked up. Bottalico said it. LeSean McCoy kind of alluded to it there. You're still kind of emotional after a game, and there are things that are still going to bother you. Look, if you do something at work, right? let's say you get a project across the finish line, whatever it is, but something pissed you off along the way. In the moment, you might be able to still celebrate it, but there's still going to be something that pisses you off, right? Like there could still be something that in the course of a given day, an interaction you have with somebody is still eating at you. And if you get home and you talk to your spouse and they say, hey, how was work? You might not lead with, hey, we got that project, and be like, yo, this asshole, like, again. It's like, well, how did the project go? Say, yeah, we got it done. It was good. Human nature. Sometimes we focus on the negative. It kind of is what it is. All right. We got to some feedback here. Chris likes the videos. Spiral Out says, show's always great. Spiral, you flatter me. Stop it. We're trying to make sure, I say we, it's just me. I'm the problem. It's me. Trying to make this show a little bit more engaging and a little bit more fun. Like to go out to the comments. I think that the video in and out stuff is, as long as nobody's getting nauseous from it, I think it's a good addition. I can't control it. It's a totally different setting. But it is what it is. Anthony Sanfilippo said, I need a producer. I don't. Well, maybe I do, but not Ant San Philly. We would just argue the whole time. We can't have that. Can't have that. Ford claims being the producer. Now, I want to go out to a couple of other things really quickly before we head out. Because I said, next steps are the important thing. Because the Eagles are at this like really interesting moment where, okay, if you want to take the fiery, hot take opinions of radio that make it sound like the whole thing's going to blow up, or you want to take what a bunch of the former players have said, that like this could maybe galvanize the team, squash the beef, and move on. We have to figure out like what is the next path? Like what are the steps? What's the path forward to make sure that this thing doesn't go off the rails? There have been a few things, and I have two more clips that I want to get to here. Both are national. So we've heard local perspective. We've heard sort of national perspective, but it's with players who have played in Philadelphia before. We're going to go out to a clip from ESPN Radio from Chris Canty. Did Chris Canty play for the Giants? Am I crazy? Let me look double. Let me double check that. I'm pretty sure. Didn't Chris Canty play for the Giants? Am I crazy? No, he played for the Cowboys. Wait, no. Hold on a second. He played for the Ravens. Did he only ever play for the Ravens? Really? No. Oh, no, I'm right. He did play for the Giants. Drafted by Dallas, played for the Giants, then moved to Baltimore. Okay. I knew he played for the Giants at some point. Okay, anyway. Chris Canty goes on ESPN Radio. And he views this as a grow-up moment for the quarterback, for the receiver, for the head coach, and for the team as a whole. And I'll tell you what. There's something about this one. There's something about this one that made me go, oh, okay. I get it. I think he's onto something. Let's go out to Chris Canty for his thoughts on this grow-up moment for the Eagles.
This type of challenge does represent an opportunity too. And we want to talk about the growth that Nick Sirianni has had as a head coach in terms of the changes that he's made. Well, this is an opportunity for the team to show growth year over year, that we're different in terms of how our leaders respond to adversity, how we collectively respond when things aren't going our way. Things have been going their way on the field for the most part the entirety of the season. Now we get to see how you respond when things aren't going your way off the field. And I think how they handle this test is going to determine ultimately what the ceiling will be. We want to crown these guys as championship contenders because of the talent on the roster. They can prove to me this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers that they're a true championship contender if they come out and get a win while overcoming the self-inflicted wounds that they had with the press clippings this week. Like, this is a grow-up moment for Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, A.J. Brown, and the Philadelphia Eagles. And what better opponent to prove that against than the Pittsburgh Steelers with Mike Tomlin, the antithesis of what the hell is happening in Philly.
All fair points. That, to me, is like all hits, no misses. Totally fair. By the way, this is the right Chris Canty. I was right, which means Ann Sanfoni, once again wrong. You hate to see it. The Chris Canty who played for the Seahawks was drafted in like the mid-90s. Different guy. This is the Chris Canty. See, who needs a producer? Fake news. All right, anyway. I think he's right, But this all comes down to whether or not the head coach has it in him. And remember, what's the one thing that all of the people who were responsible for the decision to keep Nick Sirianni in town, what's the one thing that everyone seems to agree on? He's a good social emotional coach. He's good at dealing with the egos. He might not be the best offensive mind. Again, I still seem to believe that the scripted plays early in the game might be Nick Sirianni because it feels like the first quarter is a very different game plan than the second, third, and fourth. So he might not be the best offensive mind. We know that he doesn't really have anything to do with the defense now that Vic Fangio's here. Special teams, we don't know. We don't know. But the thing that he's supposed to be good at is balancing the egos and figuring that out. Last year, it did not work. Last year, it did not, whatever he was supposed to do, the locker room fell apart. Now, was that the strife potentially between him and Hurts? It might have been. Was he too close to the situation? Maybe. Again, we don't know because we weren't there. But Chris Canty's right. It could be a grow-up moment for all of them. It could be. But that is also predicated on the belief that they have the ability to work it out and to get on the same page. I'm going to go out to the last thing here that I had. And it was from over on was Zach Gelb and Marco Belletti. And this is a little bit fun. This is a fun take on what has to happen. That they need to sit down and they have to be brought in together. And perhaps they need to sit down. They need to have a moment. And they have to watch a little film together. They have to understand that it's for the family. Let's go over to Zach Gelb and Marco Belletti.
Nick Sirianni has to nip this in the bud. And if he doesn't, a team that has Super Bowl talent is not going to be going to the Super Bowl and will not be hoisting Lombardi if your quarterback and your best offensive player, now Saquon's your best offensive player, but one of your more important players on your team in A.J. Brown aren't on the same page. That could derail this season.
It could, but I think it's more in the idea of he has to sit everybody down like, guys, we're doing this thing
like
together.
Children.
I mean, not just those two. I'm talking about the entire group. He's got to get control back on the 53 where it's we do this together. We don't talk about anything that's going on in this locker room outside of what I tell you. Never do we go out. It's almost like, I don't want to make the right, but it's almost like Godfather. It's almost like Michael telling Freddie, you don't go against the family, ever. I don't care what the situation is. You don't ever pick sides against the family. Don't ever do that again. Yeah. Sirianni has to have a sit down with this entire locker room. Guys, not against the family. We got to figure this out. A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, you two come in my office. We'll discuss the three of us. The other 50 guys, not outside the family, ever again. We do this in-house or we don't do this.
What happens in South Philadelphia stays in South Philadelphia.
So that is fair. And again, this is why I wanted to do the show like this today. Because so often we get very locked in, very narrow focused, very tunnel visioned. And we hear clips or we see clips or we maybe turn on the radio for a very quick segment. You pop it on the app and we hear a little bit. And it allows us to try to form a full opinion on just a little bit of the facts, on just a little bit of the available information. And that's where we often get ourselves way more worked up about things than we need to be. Now, if I thought that there was hell to pay, or if I thought that this season were about to collapse, you know that I would be on here screaming my head off and calling for the firing of the coach and to jettison the quarterback or the receiver in the offseason. Not doing that. Why? Because what you've heard today now is slightly irrational takes, rational takes. You've heard local media. You've heard national media. You've heard players who have played in this city. You have heard from some who haven't. You've heard from players who have been around or played with at least one of the players on this current team, and those who were on a Super Bowl team, not a winning, but a Super Bowl team in the past that had very famous beef. And when you put it all together, what are you left with? You're left with the same thing that Brandon Graham said. The main truth in what Brandon Graham said. Ultimately, if there is a problem between the quarterback and the receiver, they need to talk it out and they need to squash it. Because ultimately, every guy in that locker room wants to win. Now, that took us 55 minutes, but this to me is about as comprehensive of a breakdown of the situation as you can have. And the beauty of the show is that since we're doing it 3 times a week instead of 2, I only had to wait. We didn't do yesterday. Oh, Russ, would have been great to have a Tuesday show. I could have done yesterday. Yeah, but if we had done a Tuesday show, we would have only been reacting to Brandon Graham. Here, we got to react to Brandon Graham and the reaction from the local and national media. So I hope you enjoyed today. I do. I hope that you enjoyed the show today. JH seems to, and I appreciate that. Go over here at Ford real quick. A little gabagool, a little mozzarella. Did Aunt Sam know they would be referencing the Godfather on this show? I bet he didn't. This is good. Chris Freed. Godfather music makes me think we're heading to a Nancy Kerrigan moment. Just not sure if it's with this show or the Eagles. Let me tell you something. You come to Novacare, you besmirch the name of the quarterback, you besmirch the name of the Philadelphia Eagles. What if it's Jeffrey Lurie? Like, what if Jeffrey Lurie, like, packs the gauze in his cheeks like Marlon Brando did in The Godfather? What if Jeffrey Lurie is the one who calls in Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and says, you guys need to sit down. We're going to have a conversation here. You want to know something? Last year, you people, these players, these coaches, you lost your shit. We had a good season going. You fucked it up. We're not going there again. We're not going back. We're not doing this again. You're going to figure it out. We got some prosciutto. We got some mozzarella. We got some gabagool. We're going to sit down here, okay? We're going to figure this out. Or somebody's not going to like the consequences. Imagine Jeffrey Lurie doing that. That would be something, my friends. Imagine that. Imagine. We will see. I want to thank everybody who joined me today. Now, listen, if you were looking for Flyers breakdown, that's not today. I will make sure that we talk about the Flyers, maybe the basketball team, and I still... the Phillies. We'll probably talk about them on Friday as well. Plus, we will preview the Battle of the Keystone State as the Eagles take on the Steelers on Sunday. In the meantime, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to The Russ Joy Show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music. You can find the show there. It's usually up within an hour or two after the show ending. You can listen to it in the podcast feed. You can watch on YouTube. It's also on X and Facebook, but YouTube is probably your best call. Make sure you subscribe there. Remember, as soon as we hit 500 subscribers, I am going to randomly select one subscriber to the channel. That person will win the jersey of their choice, worth up to $175. So, in this holiday season, what better way to put a nice little bow, a nice little star on the Christmas tree than getting the jersey of your choice at no cost? It's just for subscribing to The Russ Joy Show on YouTube. I will be back on Friday. If you can, leave a comment in the regular comment section once the live show is over. Let me know, what did you agree with, disagree with? Did we like the new production of the show? Did we not like it? Too many clips, not enough clips. You let me know. And in the meantime, I want to thank you for watching The Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You know that because you're smart. And it's also the name of the show. I'll talk to all of you Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. live on YouTube, X, and Facebook. Talk to all of you very, very soon.